it going, everybody? It's Warren, and welcome to this week's episode of Theory Thursdays, my weekly segment where you all submit your theories. I choose 5 to go over each week. You choose which one you thought was your favorite for the week, and then which one you thought was your favorite for the month. Still giving away 2 IMAX tickets right now to the monthly winner, so you can go see Avengers Endgame in IMAX or Spider-Man Far From Home when it comes out. If you would like to submit your own theory for a chance to end up in Theory Thursdays, you can find the email to send it to in the description down below. Alright, so let's dive into this week's theories. Our first theory comes from Harsh Grover with a theory on how the MCU will connect together after the events of Avengers Endgame. Harsh says, concerning the new development involving the multiverse, I theorize that each separate universe out of the infinite universes in the multiverse have their own separate set of timelines, and dimensions like the mirror, dark, and quantum realm will be used to travel between the universes. Proof of this is that Kevin Feige hinted that the quantum realm will play a huge role in Phase 4 and is likely related to the multiverse since Far From Home is the last movie in Phase 3 and will hint at this throughout the movie and in the post-credit scene. In an interview, Tom Holland accidentally let slip that Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange had a lot of quantum realm related lines in Endgame, but it didn't really happen. I think it's possible that since Marvel wanted a really amazing closure to the Avengers, they chose not to include much about Phase 4 because it would distract the audience from the main event. However, they might choose to include references to this in Far From Home and in the post-credit scene of Far From Home as a good passage into Phase 4. It's likely that Doctor Strange will play a big part with this in Phase 4 because of this reference and because it's his job to deal with the outside threats. So this theory has a lot of merits because now that the multiverse is being introduced, we're obviously going to see characters go back and forth between universes, which means at some point in time we're going to see people figure out how to do that. And since the Avengers have already figured out how to use the quantum realm to time travel, it would make sense that they would use the quantum realm to travel between universes. And I doubt we've seen the last of the dark dimension in Doctor Strange. In fact, Doctor Strange probably already has the ability to travel between different universes as it is. So perhaps he could be the key figure to traveling between the universes in Phase 4 of the MCU. So that's theory number 1, on to number 2. Theory number 2 comes from YouTube user Mysterio1264, and they have a theory on Mysterio. This theory states that the Ancient One actually taught Quentin Beck in a very special way of the mystical arts, a way that only a few students that trained under the Ancient One knew of. I think that Beck took the power out of hand, killed the others that knew of the power, and left Kamar Taj. This is why Beck's powers look very similar to Doctor Strange's, but are still very different. I think that Beck used this power to travel to a different Earth to become their hero figure like Iron Man. But soon the people of that new Earth found out who he really was, a villain, so when the snap happened he took advantage of it, crossed over to our Earth again after hearing about the death of the Ancient One, and claimed that the snap tore a hole in his dimension. I think that at about 3/4 into the movie, Doctor Strange will tell Peter Beck's true origin, as Beck's betrayal being told through the generations of the sorcerers, and will help Peter defeat Beck with the help of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then I think the end credits will be the MCU setting up Kang the Conqueror as the next villain. The theory that Mysterio was actually taught by the Ancient One is a good theory that has been going around, and their powers do look very similar. However, the twist on this theory is that Quentin Beck was actually taught some ancient power that not a lot of people were taught, and then he killed everybody else that knew it besides the Ancient One, and then he used that power to go to a different universe. So this theory is that the snap tearing a hole through Earth's dimension is fake, but the multiverse is still real, which I do like the idea of. And if this is the case, then Doctor Strange would definitely know who Quentin Beck is. So it would make sense that he would tell Spider-Man about his origin and help him defeat him. So that does it for theory number 2, on to theory number 3. Theory number 3 comes from Xander Fedawa with a theory about Captain America and how he got his superpowers. And this theory correlates with Black Panther. Xander says, what if Captain America's super soldier serum wasn't actually made from technology, but is actually made using the heart-shaped herb? I think that the American government had some sort of contact with Wakanda and made some sort of deal. A deal to get a heart-shaped herb and some vibranium. If you remember, the American government tried previously to make a super soldier, but that didn't turn out well. I think that they first tried to make a super soldier serum with technology, but failed, and then used the heart-shaped herb that they got from Wakanda. This theory actually makes a lot of sense because if you look at Captain America's Civil War and you look at Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, there are a lot of similarities between Black Panther and Captain America. They tend to be the same speed, they tend to move the same way, and their body builds are kind of the same as well. And they did try to build super soldiers before and it didn't work. Perhaps why it worked on Captain America is because of the heart-shaped herb. And clearly the government had some sort of contact with Wakanda or somebody who has been to Wakanda because they did have vibranium, which is what Cap's shield is made out of. So you never know, maybe Captain America got his powers from the heart-shaped herb. So that's it for theory number 3. On to theory number 4. Theory number 4 comes from Mansell Jennings with another Captain America theory that ties into the X-Men being introduced into the MCU. Mansell's theory states that since Captain America's kids have the super soldier DNA, they would have some sort of superhuman strength. This could allow Charles Xavier to have interest and invite them to a school for gifted youngsters. This would allow the X-Men to be introduced with gene mutation like how Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely had said. The word would eventually get out about the school and Nick Fury would be interested in the gifted youngsters. Nick Fury would go there and want to recruit some of the mutants. Charles would say no and would tell him to leave, but would eventually think about making the X-Men team to help the world through a major crisis. This could start a disagreement within the mutants in the school and around the world. Some would want to have a team and others would want to stay in the shadows. This could introduce many bad mutants into the MCU as well, such as Dark Phoenix and others. So this theory ties into what Avengers Endgame writers Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely said about Captain America's kids having the super soldier DNA. They did confirm that this is true. So this lines right up with that, and it would be really cool to have Captain America's kids enter the MCU. Because if they're anything like their father, they're not going to be able to sit back while all this bad stuff happens in the planet. They want to do something to try and stop all the bad things that are happening. And this way, introducing the X-Men into the MCU is kind of acting like they've been there the whole entire time. Charles Xavier already has his school set up and he recruits Captain America's 2 kids to come to the school. And this is where they could introduce all of the other X-Men. Something that I cannot wait to happen in the MCU. So that's it for the 4th theory. On to the final theory, number 5. Theory number 5 comes from Jay Shadow with a theory that the Hulk, when he snapped, actually brought back the original Infinity Stones. Jay states that there were 2 snaps before Hulk snapped. The first one that was used to get rid of half of the population from the universe, and the second was used to destroy the stones. Both were technically used to destroy. So if Professor Hulk's snap brought everything that was destroyed back, he could have brought back the Infinity Stones to their original form. So this theory actually ties into what the directors, Anthony and Joe Russo, said about Avengers Endgame and the Infinity Stones actually not being completely destroyed. They said that the stones were technically reduced to atoms, just like Thanos said in the movie, and aren't gone completely, implying that they can be restored somehow and used again. So maybe when Hulk undid everything that Thanos did with the stones, he brought back the stones, since Thanos did destroy the stones. It certainly would not surprise me if this were the case, because I doubt we've seen the last of the Infinity Stones in the MCU. And if this is the case, they could definitely introduce Infinity Watch, which is something that I would love to see. So those are this week's theories for Theory Thursday. Let's do a quick recap. Theory number 1 is that the mirror dimension, the dark dimension, and that the quantum realm are going to be used to travel between the universes in the MCU multiverse. Theory number 2 is that Quentin Beck was actually taught a rare form of the mystic arts by the Ancient One and then left to a different universe. Then after he found out the Ancient One was dead, he came back to our Earth. And eventually Doctor Strange tells Peter Parker who he is and they defeat him together. Theory number 3 is that the super soldier serum that made Captain America into who he is was actually made from the heart-shaped herb. Theory number 4 is that Captain America's children having the super soldier DNA get invited to Charles Xavier's school, and this introduces the X-Men into the MCU. And theory number 5 is that when the Hulk snapped, he actually brought back the Infinity Stones in their original form. So that does it for this week's theories. Again, do not forget to vote on which one you thought was your favorite this week. If you would like to enter your own theory for a chance to end up in an episode of Theory Thursdays, you can find the email to send it to and the instructions in the description down below. As always, thank you all for joining me here on Theory Thursdays, and thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.